Hey everyone, I am really excited about this conversation. I'm even more excited now that I get to see the inside of Mike's world, which is much more visually interesting than I could ever have imagined it to be. I don't know if you're willing to do the pan that you just showed me.
Sure. Usually people ask me if I have a lot of post-it notes in the back, what the purpose is, and then they sort of get the full pan of everything else around.
That is fantastic.
We get a little bit of a what the heck is going on here with all that. That's,
First of all, I think everyone should be working in a very colorful, visually appealing environment. So the fact that it is functionally useful for you is great, and we can talk about your systems of design thinking, but just as an aesthetic space, I feel like that's a good thing.
it's more fun that way. These are generally the things I like to keep track of that aren't changing all the time. Deal flow sourcing channels, LPs, revenue channels, old portfolio decisions, fundraising and deployment plans, all that. It's just a little bit easier to track in one wide aperture than trying to do one screen with 50 tabs sometimes.
Are you tempted at all by Apple Vision?
I'm a Luddite. I invest in very Luddite style tech, like a lot of legacy software, a lot of compliance technology. I love new tech. I've invested in companies that have AI, but I am as happy with post-it notes as I am with a new GPT prompt.
That's fantastic. So first of all, let's start off with just basic intros. Tell me a little bit about who you are. I know who you are, but for everybody else watching.
My name is Mike MacCombie. I am a VC in New York City. I run my own fund. It's been a stealth fund for the last about 3 years. And I invest in pre-seed and seed stage companies, usually the more unhypey, fewer headlines, East Coast style companies. And I invest in vertical software, compliance tech, B2B marketplaces, and supply chain logistics. Basically, things that if the customers want them, they know. You don't need to have a huge discovery cycle to find out. And beyond that, I am a very active community builder. I think I run 146 different communities across multiple cities, geo-focused investments, stages, sectors, entity types, and functions for both operators and investors.
Awesome. And I'm a very happy member of one of those communities. Although I do feel like I got grandfathered in a little bit because I don't know if technically, I mean, I guess technically if I have a portfolio, I'm still a VC, but I feel like a lurker sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, compare that to other groups where you'll have 1,000 people and only 300 of them are even investors of any type. I think, we're at 99% purity of curation rather than 50.
Exactly. So your fund has a thesis around principles of behavior design, and you were a behavior science-based consultant. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, how does this behavioral design play into your thinking when it comes to investment decisions?
So a little bit back, my first career, I was a teacher to middle school students with special needs. And when you get 6,000 lesson plans of what's actually going to be compelling and interesting and memorable for the students, it basically was just elevating up to adults. So when I was in the behavior science center realm, I'd be listening to and reading applied behavioral research and seeing everything from mental priming to emotional resonance to memory to open-mindedness, and taking that to loyalty programs, referral programs, events, communities, experience design, narrative design to say, how does this company make something more compelling for its users, customers, or partners? And then once you've done that enough, I got rose-colored goggles on where you're used to looking at everything from is this enough? Why will people even care? From a very guttural, maybe middle school student with special needs level, a tolerance level. And so it's very hard for me to look at companies that there's just no reason for customer demand to automatically be there. And so I focus very much on fundamental first principles of companies. What does it take to be a behaviorally aligned company? It's ones where the story is so clear, it's not getting lost in translation between your champion and your decision maker. It's ones where the employees, the investors, and customers all can get it on a one-page sales deck if they needed to. It means you have a product that's so sticky and easy to use that even an MVP will get interest and have low churn. The biggest thing I think that makes a difference is the speed of acquisition and distribution. Every first time founder thinks on product, every second time founder thinks in distribution. And a big point of me is distribution leverage. Can a founder or a team get to a lot of customers in an increasing leverageable way? So high trust, high velocity, or high social proof customer networks, where you get the first one and it leads to an increasing velocity rather than we got our core ICP, and now as we go further and further from it, it just feels like we're slowing down and maybe hitting a plateau. And then the last one is a business model that makes sense. People are not going to say, oh, now you want to charge us? We're not going to. Usage can increase with revenue. And usually there's a very of course decision from the customer.
So I love that quote that second time founders think about distribution. It's one of the reasons why I feel like a lot of times when somebody pitches me a consumer model, I push them to make sure that it's not actually a B2B model that makes sense or B2B to C model that makes sense, because that's where a critical mass of customers are. That's the hardest part often, is getting to those customers in a cost-efficient way.
And I think the biggest challenge is not even holding the bar at you need to consistently get to customers, but how do you even more easily get to more customers with bigger ACVs? That's, for me, a big trigger point of interest. If they're not just saying, oh, we got the big one and they're a medium contract size, and then we get the next one, they're kind of next. I say, no, we can go from 1 million to 5 million to 15 million to 50 million ACVs. That's much more my style. And grateful to have a few portfolio companies that do that.
Nice. So why vertical software and compliance tech as a focus for your fund?
One, I think in those sectors, if you're backing into it, the customer profiles are much more similar. If you're serving that vertical, you most likely have a bottoms up customer insight. And also, if you're able to serve one, they tend to have high referral value or high shareability between the customers. You're not going one Fortune 500 to the next, and both the culture is different and you have to get a new champion and they might not even have similar needs. These customers, frankly, look a lot alike in a market where there's probably not going to be as many competitors. And if somebody's operating in it, they probably have experience in it, because only so many companies are going to go into waste hauling or into food safety and have an advantage if they're not already operating in it or know the customers well. Plus, also, I think my expertise is not being the deepest thinking person on AI and agentic AI applications, but saying, can I move faster down a learning curve on a company before everybody else realizes it's really valuable and marks me up 3x? And so it's where I've just learned my best game is played. Not to mention, if you know that you're serving that vertical, they're not going to make it based on hype. They basically just want to do the things that are fundamental to their business, which means, again, faster sales cycles and more of an of-course decision.
So I have a question for you related to applications and short windows for attention, short windows of attention. What I mean by that is you run a bunch of pitch related events where a company, not events, but like mailing lists and all that sort of stuff, where a company gives a very small amount of information about itself and is trying to get noticed in a sea of other companies. We just ran applications for the pre-Series A offsite, a couple hundred applications, very few questions, and it was just really striking. Given a limited opportunity in a one sentence, two sentence way, and I'm curious, what advice do you have for founders where you don't even have 20 minutes for a pitch? Somebody gets a couple of sentences about what you're doing and you're trying to get noticed or you're trying to get a meeting. What stands out to you? What do you wish more founders did?
I think, frankly, there needs to be, it's 3 simple things. And I actually remember this back from a book that my professor, Danny Warshay, shared in an entrepreneurship class in college. And it was, you need to have a overt benefit, not just we kind of do this thing and make it better. It needs to be a dramatic, different thing where it's just like, it's not just like every other single thing. And you need to have a reason to believe that it's true. Overt benefit could be something that's an order of magnitude faster, a very clear, hey, we're not just going to make it nice and easy or save time. It's saying we cut costs by 40%. You save 10 hours a week for $100 of payment. They know the business case very clearly. It can't be the same as everybody else, because I'm sure every agentic AI powered SDR can save you hours and hours and save you meetings. Well, guess what? There's an article that just came out, I think today or yesterday, about one that just wasn't that good, because sometimes you need a real reason to believe. And the last thing is, why should somebody give you credibility? And so if you are somebody who's a former radiologist that is building a radiology company that saves employees 80% of their self-insured and out-of-pocket costs, you have a clear expertise of somebody, you have an overt benefit, and it's something that is not done by everybody else. Happens to be one of my portfolio companies that I'm very happy to be invested in. But yeah, if you can't summarize it in 3 sentences, and you say, well, I've been thinking about this thing and it goes that way, and we make it easier. Easier doesn't mean anything. It's like telling somebody on a resume, like, I made the job easier for my people around me. You have no data points. So it should feel like a resume where you got the 3 bullet points of exactly what you do, what makes it clear. Frankly, if you don't need to say that much more there. And if you don't have those bullet points, continue building your product or continue getting customer feedback until you do. If you have 100% retention, no churn, that's a data point. If you have people that are willing to increase their contract sizes by 4x, that's a data point. That's what you need to start seeing, because somebody is saying, I'm another person doing a thing in a popular space that's a little better. VCs on average meet 100 companies to pick one. Unless you have a reason to be that top one out of 100, it's going to be tough.
That's a really good point, is if your pitch isn't great in that way, sometimes crafting a better pitch is not the thing. Sometimes you have to make the company better and you haven't quite figured out what the value proposition of the product is yet. You should go back and work on that until the pitch is awesome.
Yeah, I think the days of 2021 where an interesting person with a good idea can automatically raise are gone. You either need to know exactly what questions are answering, in which case somebody might fund your research process, or you need to have already answered those questions and you want to operate on that or scale from that.
Awesome. Well, listen, it was great getting to know a little bit more about you and your process and your insight and your visually appealing workspace. And I really appreciate you making time for office hours this week.
Happy to help.
No problem.